Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members present today are Nate Anderson, Michael Burns, Chad Cota, Jeff Shawman, Bobby Celine, and Deb White.
And are there any agenda amendments?
None from staff.
Next item, approve the minutes. So
Second.
Motion has been made to approve the minutes. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Any citizens care to address the board? Commissioners' reports? Well, let's just jump into the next one. The 2020 legislative priorities, and why don't both you and Bob come up, Lisa? Thank you.
Yeah, and just a little heads up too, we just thought having Lisa and Bob kind of do it together. Obviously, the underpass is a part of the legislative priorities, so we figured we'll just kind of tag team it together for it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. Within your meeting materials, you have the resolution that was passed by the City Council at the end of January that includes what the city's legislative priorities are. And the capital bonding initiatives, you may recall from last session, legislative session, that no bonding bill was passed last year. So the projects 1 through 3 enumerated in the resolution are carryover from the City of Moorhead's request last year. They include
Lisa, excuse me. What page are you on?
for item number 6, page 4. It's a City Council resolution.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So the project number 1 is the Clay County Waste Management Campus, the solid waste transfer station that, is the city's number 1 priority to get that accomplished. That's a shovel-ready project. Number 2, as Derek mentioned, and Bob will talk about in a little bit, is funding for the downtown Moorhead 11th Street grade separation. And that is in the governor's recommendations for funding through MnDOT. And third priority is the Department of Natural Resources funding for the flood mitigation program, flood hazard reduction grant program, to help Moorhead advance our flood control. And the last project is a new project that we are advancing, and that is support of a community and aquatic center for Moorhead. So, and there's more citizen participation to come on that project, but we're excited about it and what that could mean to the community. So those are the bonding projects, and we also have some policy initiatives that we are advancing, as is important to the Economic Development Authority and economic development in general for the City of Moorhead, is preserving and protecting the Border City Enterprise Zone and disparity reduction credit programs. And that is something we made big progress on last year. So at this point, it is really monitoring and making sure that we can preserve that program. And another priority that is important to growing our community is securing local discretion and flexibility for border cities concerning building codes and related construction regulations. So we'll look at opportunities that there might be to advance rules in that regard that help level the playing field for our building community. And the third policy initiatives is to secure legislative authority to place a local option sales tax question or multiple questions on a general election ballot in 2022. And that is, these are just preliminary steps. What we need to do if we want to consider a sales tax, the City Council needed to pass a resolution by January 31st of this year in order to have that considered by the legislature and the City Council did that on January 27th. Step 2 of this process is to get the legislative authority to do that. And future steps include more citizen participation with the business community and with the community as a whole about whether a sales tax would be an appropriate mechanism to help with Moorhead's capital investments, and which of a possibility of up to 5 projects might be considered for a ballot in 2022. So the projects that are under consideration, there are briefing sheets on those in your packet as well, and they include the local match for the Community and Aquatic Center. It includes also the, let's see, I've got the resolution in here, I don't want to leave any out, regional parks and trails, a new City Hall library complex, and transportation improvements. The local match for those transportation projects on roads which would be considered regional in nature, not our neighborhood streets, but projects where, where there's significant impact, travel in and out of the community, like those around our major commercial industrial properties, like Bush and American Crystal Sugar, those that are near the colleges, those that are near entertainment and sporting venues. And so we've developed a list of criteria that we've shared with the legislature that we are asking their consideration on. The other is an inclusive playground for South Moorhead and completion of the bike pedestrian trail along the Red River, which would be a wonderful regional benefit. All of the projects for sales tax consideration do require a regional benefit. So we had a hearing in the House last week and presented these projects for preliminary consideration. So we've made a little bit of progress on that to date. And, again, just stressing that community conversations need to continue on this, that we're not in a position yet to say we are going to pursue a sales tax. We just didn't want to lose the opportunity because we do have significant capital needs in the city that would make our city not a better value. So it's important. We're hearing from residents and the community that those things are important to keep our community competitive and growing. So that's a overview. I think Bob should talk about 11th Street, and then maybe we'll open it up for questions if that's your choice.
Thank you.
Some of the information on 11th Street in your packet starts on page 6. It's page 6 and 7. The format of that looks a little strange. It's intended to be a booklet-type briefing sheet, so what you see on page 6 is actually front and back, and page 7 are the 2 inside pages. This is information that we've used to support the project at the federal level. Last year, the city applied for a federal grant under what's called the BUILD program. So this is the information that we used at that time. But maybe backing up, the city, in conjunction with MnDOT, actually started preliminary engineering for an underpass at 11th Street in 2018. And that work is scheduled to be complete this year. There are still many moving pieces to that effort. We're working with...
And Bob, if I don't mind interjecting here quickly, I just want to let everybody know, while Bob's talking, Amy's also just going to loop the simulations for the project too, if that spurs questions. But I don't know if anybody's had a chance to see that yet, but we just thought it was important just to loop that while Bob was talking. Sorry, Bob.
It's much better to watch that than to watch me talk. Working with BN on their requirements, working with MnDOT on trunk highway requirements, as this involves the trunk highway system. We're also going to be and initiated an effort to work with the potentially impacted property owners, did some outreach meetings one-on-one outreach meetings in January and February. So all of those things have sort of undetermined outcomes that will affect the final design of the project. The point of that being, as it relates to either the configuration shown in your packet or to these simulations, is what the final product is highly unlikely to be exactly what's shown in any of those. There are disclaimers on both the schematic in your packet as well as those animations. I recognize nobody reads disclaimers, but they are there. They both show a large green space areas adjacent to the project, and that's really the portion that remains to be determined. I think we all recognize the value of the property downtown in general, and there will definitely be an effort to conserve as much property as we can for development. But we have to weigh all those other factors in addition to overall project cost, and that will determine the final configuration. But we thought that it was extremely important to get more information out to the public and to affected property owners to illustrate what the project will be and potentially what the benefits of that would be. And I think the animations in that regard do provide a lot of value. So there are a couple of different views here. There's, I think, 2 street views and 1 aerial view. I tend to think the street views are a little more informative. Part of this project would involve realignment of the trunk highway system. So currently, the segment on 8th Street from Main to Center, and then Center from 8th to 11th Street is trunk highway. We'd essentially flop that with Main and 11th Street. And that's really important in terms of MnDOT's participation. MnDOT has been a strong advocate for the project and the benefits that it would bring not only to the trunk highway system or the state, but also to the city. As Lisa had mentioned, the governor did include a recommendation for this project in his bonding proposal under MnDOT's rail grade separation program. His recommendation was $110 million. I believe MnDOT had a couple of projects that they were advocating for or going to advocate for, and that's where the number came from. Not a number specific to either of the projects, but I can tell you that this is a very high priority project for MnDOT, which will make this project very different than the underpass near the high school. That was a city-only project. Having MnDOT as a partner will be very beneficial. As I noted, the information in your packet was part of a build grant application from 2019. We obviously did not get that grant. We did do a debrief with US DOT officials. This is a national program, extremely competitive program. This is not the first time we've applied for these types of grants. What we learned is that we fell into what's called the highly recommended category nationwide, which is, I think, the top 10% of all of the applications, which is good. Unfortunately, we weren't ultimately selected. There is a new solicitation for that same program that just came out with applications due in May, and the city will be considering another application. City Council will eventually be considering another application of that program. Given how we've fared in the past in terms of ranking top category, likely would warrant another application. Just maybe one last comment about the project in general. A couple of there's some good detailed information in here about benefits that the project would bring. Part of the effort involves some pretty sophisticated traffic modeling in the downtown area. So at current day, about 70 trains pass through town per day, about 5 hours of traffic disruption. Looking out to the future, by 2045, the predictions are that we'd have 90 trains per day, about 7 hours of traffic disruption. That assumes 1% growth in train volume and 0.5 or 0.5% growth in vehicle volume. Anything beyond those numbers essentially results in traffic volumes that exceed the capacity of the street network downtown, which would result in a lot of congestion. Essentially during the afternoon peak hours, vehicle traffic would be continuously disrupted by trains. So there's a lot of benefit in terms of the operation of the downtown transportation system in terms of what this project would bring, in addition to a number of other benefits related to emergency services, safety, and so on. So we're pursuing both state and federal funding, and I think have made some pretty good progress so far.
Thank you. You have anything to add, Derek?
No, I don't think so at this point in time. I mean, obviously with Lisa and Bob here, they're kind of the experts with these kind of specific agendas, but you know, we're grateful for them and what they're doing, obviously at the capital level and the federal level too. I mean, these are some big projects, especially the underpass one. It's a substantial capital project, so we're hopeful. Communication continues to be a top priority, especially with the surrounding business owners and the public. So as we learn more information, we're trying to get that out as quick as we can, but future impacts and just, you know, what it means for the overall system of development and transportation is certainly big. So we'd value your input. I will say this too, I was going to wait for a little bit of conversation, but I think Pat Kovash has mentioned this in the past too about the EDA and participation, specifically when it comes to legislative items and letters of support or different things. I don't know if that's something that, you know, Bob and Lisa are seeking, or if that's something that is desired by this board, but maybe keep that in the back of your mind a little bit as well from my knowledge, I don't think the EDA has done anything like that recently. Maybe last year there could have been one particular item, but I don't think that's something that's been done here recently. So it's something to think about when you're asking questions too.
Okay. Well, I, for one, having my business right on Center Avenue, can attest to the frustration that the train volume creates. And in the relatively recent past, somebody must have asked for letters of support, and I responded to that because I can't wait.
Mr. Chair, we did, I believe, request letter of support from you as a business owner and also from the EDA for the build grants.
Gotcha.
In the applications. We have not done so for the state grant yet. We'll talk with our legislative advisors to see if that is needed or helpful, but it is very much appreciated that you do support it, and you do support the legislative work of the city.
Yep,
So.
most definitely. Any other? Yeah, Deb.
Bob, I was wondering for that next round of the build grant, so one is, in the debriefing, did they give you any suggestions on things we could change? But also, will the review occur this year or, oh, okay. So not after January, maybe?
I'll answer the last one first. The new round of applications, the submittals are due May 18th, and the announcements on awards are supposed to be made by September 15th. We did get feedback on both the narrative and the benefit cost analysis portions of the application. To be honest, the narrative portion, I think Lisa said it after the debrief, we got an A. Mm-hmm. Shooting for an A+. I mean, we're in the highly recommended category. Mm-hmm. It appeared there's a little bit of work we could still do on the benefit cost analysis, and that the DOT reviewers didn't fully comprehend the modeling that was done. So that'll be the major effort in this new application. One would hope that we would be put into that same category again. The process is that there's a technical group at USDOT staffers that review the applications, and then they categorize those into highly recommended or not recommended. And then those applications, the highly recommended applications, advance to the senior staff level, ultimately to the Secretary of Transportation to determine the awards within the criteria.
Do we get any data on, in terms of among all of the applicants that were highly recommended, what the breakdown is across the nation? I know that Minnesota didn't get a single one.
There, that information is published in terms of where the grants are allocated. There are some criteria in terms of geographic equitability and other criteria. After it advances to the senior staff level, we don't really get feedback on how the selection's made.
If I could ask a follow-up question to that, so do we know what the percentage of highly recommended are that eventually receive award?
We got that at one of the debriefing calls. I don't have it up immediately available, but there were a lot of applications. So it was, I don't know, 25, 35%, something like that, in that range.
And then could you touch on, because I'm sure a lot of your model and the cost-benefit analysis results in the realignment of Highway 75. So can you describe how that realignment looks? So currently it goes from and to.
Right. Thanks for the question. The page 7 on the lower portion of, that's it, yep, the lower portion. If you look for the black dashed lines on 8th Street and Center Avenue, that's the current trunk highway alignment. And with this project, and we actually already have the basics of this agreement in place, that would be swapped for the alignment shown in the red dashed line. So the trunk highway would shift off of 8th over to 11th and would shift off of Center down to Main Avenue and put it right on the alignment of the new underpass.
Are there implications to existing business owners for access onto the newly aligned, in particular on Main Avenue? Or are they able to preserve current access?
So part of the Sims project that we did 4 years ago downtown, that was done in conjunction with MnDOT, and that design envisioned this future swap, so I would expect nothing would change.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You want to brief us on the McCara?
Yep.
Information?
Yeah, absolutely. So we have two items here. We'll be seeking motions on both of those items, but as a refresher, I know we have a lot of new faces on the board as well. The McCara Development Control Board is a kind of subcommittee group of the EDA. It has some of our members here on it. I know Nate and Jeff are on. Pat is as well. And then two owners within the park itself. So an owner rep from RDO and another one from Regals. We meet on basically a as-needed basis and specifically looking at changes of use in the park. So, if a sale comes and a new business is coming in, reviewing it against the covenants, as well as any new development plans that the city has public land out there, this group reviews to make sure it's a good use moving forward. The first project that you see here, and you'll see a communication in your packet on page 33, I'll just say it was an awkward one for the board, and I'll get into it a little bit, is because, and Jeff and Nate, please feel free to add if I miss anything, but this is a wonderful company. This is our first outside of the region primary sector business that's came into this community in probably 15 plus years. So they purchased the former Gavilon fertilizer site within the park. It's a rail lot or rail kind of user. Private land sale. Gavilon sold their property to Springer Midwest. But then this kind of control board has to come in after the fact and basically verify their use and verify their being there, right? It puts it in a little bit of a weird spot, an awkward spot for especially city representative, EDA representatives, kind of looking at should this property be sold. So we had a lot of conversation about that afterwards, about city's participation in the Makar covenants as it moves forward, especially as we've developed the park further. There's less and less privately owned lots in the park. Specifically, if you reference the page 35 with that map that you'll see there, the lots along the interstate, so directly to the east of that holding pond, there's only 2 lots that will be publicly held after a lot of them that we sold last year. There's Springer Midwest, you see their property that they've acquired in the hash there. There's 2 lots to the south west of them that are on the railroad that's publicly owned. And then there's some land that's south of 34th Avenue South. So there's really, like, from a stageable lot standpoint, 4 lots within the park itself. So we've talked about kind of that privately controlled covenant board moving forward. But getting back to specifically Springer Midwest, and I'll just be really brief about it. Springer Midwest, they had options to go to Sioux Falls, Valley City, St. Cloud. They ultimately chose Moorhead. They loved the site. They loved the access to rail. They're not taking advantage of any incentives locally too. So this is just we kind of put our merits out there, and they ultimately chose Moorhead, which was fantastic. Give credit to Amy and Dan for doing a lot of the calls with them as well. What they are is basically a lumber distribution center. So they do distribution for all the Menards, the Lowe's, the Home Depots in town. So they're not producing lumber there, but they're storing it, and then it kind of gets distributed from there. Really, the only thing that they're doing to the building in the immediate future is constructing a lean-to building on the south end of the property, and that's what you'll see, like on the map there. You'll see this little yellow rectangular box on the south of the south side of the building. That's what they're constructing in the immediate future, just to kind of have some overhead storage out of the elements a little bit for some of their materials. But ultimately, the Makar Review Board recommended approval. The EDA has the final authority in that, so we'd be looking for a motion specifically for this project for approval. So maybe we'll start with that one before we get into RDO.
Okay, thanks, Derek. So is there a motion to approve this? Nate, second?
Second.
Second by Jeff. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you, Derek.
Yeah, absolutely. So then the second one that you'll find on your agenda here is specifically for an RDO project. Again, going back to that map on page 35, we don't have a communication for this one, but on page 35, RDO has obviously their facility on the north west side of the Makar Industrial Park. They have acquired the 2 lots directly east of the holding pond on the north. So where you see 29th Avenue South, basically the lot directly north of the number 29, and then the one north west of that. What their hope is they're going to we have a signed purchase agreement with the city council on this one for a future expansion project. We don't have the details specifically of what that project will look like yet, but they will close on the property in March of 2021. So in the short term of about a year, they're asking the Makar Review Board, or we had to go through the Makar Review Board for review, of using those 2 lots as equipment display for their heavy equipment sales aspect of it. So they will be using it as equipment display. You'll already kind of see some around the holding pond already. They would just expand that to those 2 lots. Once the property would close in March of 2021, per the covenants, they have 12 months to get a building permit, and then 24 months to have a project completed. So have some protections with the covenant, but this is just that intermediate kind of temporary use of equipment display that they be using at this. And that's what this McCarr Review Board reviewed, as well as the EDA needs to have approval on as well. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions as well.
So does that mean when the property closes, will this board again receive more information?
Yeah, as long as the covenants don't change, right, kind of as we were kind of alluding to before, but I would think we'd probably have some protections as new projects, specifically publicly owned projects that are coming into the park. Yes, this review board would ultimately look at that project, making sure it meets the covenants that are required. And these covenants too, just for reference, I mean, they're looking at everything from building materials or some maintenance sides of stuff. There's a lot of details in there when it initially got put in place.
Okay, thank you. So, a motion to approve. Is there a motion to approve?
Make that motion.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Thank you.
Yeah, and just a reminder, so again, those lots along the interstate, we had some traction with those last year, kind of the end of 2018. So Dan Perro with ISR Homes, he was looking to build his corporate his office showroom for his home building business. That one will ultimately be going forward to the McCarr Review Board probably within the next month, I would think, maybe a month and a half. So again, I don't think the covenants are going to change. I think we'll have a further conversation at the next McCarr Review Board, but we'll have another project coming forward in the next month and a half, 2 months.
Okay. Moving on, the director's report.
Yeah, I'll be brief with it, but a couple things I want to touch on. One, thank you for all of those that participated in our downtown plan workshops and the open house. We had just an excellent turnout with our workshops, which I think we had. We were outside beginning of February, right? You never know what's going to happen, but I think our lowest attended one maybe had 15 people. Our highest one had 30, so we had great turnout for the workshops, which was fantastic. Had I would say almost, or well, we could have been over 150. I don't think we actually ended up having an account, but we probably had 150 people show up at the open house, which was really fantastic. Again, my big takeaway that I wrote in here too was the majority that I talked to or that I was watching weren't just in there to kind of show face and leave. They were participating. Most of them were there for 30 minutes or more. We've been kind of taking all those comments. Our hope is to actually have, at our April meeting, we'll have the downtown consultant team back in Moorhead. Our hope is that we're actually going to maybe do a joint meeting with the city council, the EDA, and some of the technical staff team that's behind it, immediately following our regularly scheduled EDA meeting. So we'd maybe try to do something on April 6th, try to get a lot more in-depth conversation about what was heard, and then next steps moving forward. So we're looking forward to that, and as soon as we know more and get confirmation on our consultant schedule, we'll be making sure we send an email out to the group to kind of reserve some calendar time. The other things that I wanted to focus on too is really kind of the next bullet item, which is the kind of business retention meeting. So Ryan is here with the Greater Fargo Moorhead EDC. Myself, Ryan, and City Manager Chris Volkers went to meet with Anheuser-Busch. I think there's been some concern over the utility rate increases over the next few years. So it was good to connect with them. I think we're trying to get some additional resources and data from the plant manager at Anheuser-Busch, just trying to figure out where we stand and how we can kind of get competitive or at least align with other markets that they deal with. We had another visit with Soul Avenue. Nikki Berglund's the owner of Soul Avenue. I think the month of January was just really tough on restaurants as a whole in our community, not just Moorhead, but I think regionally really, really difficult with the amount of snow we had. A few of the storms hit over the weekends, which is usually when they're pulling in the most amount of revenue. So we had a good conversation. Mayor Judd and I met with Nikki Berglund, just talking about the restaurant industry as a whole, some different challenges. Also just talking about what, we can kind of do to kind of promote our restaurants, our local restaurants a little bit better. That's something that I think probably Sherry Larson with Moorhead Business Association and myself with my Downtown Moorhead Inc. will play, maybe trying to put together a restaurant guide or some type of resource to kind of continue to promote our local restaurant industry. But I know it was a tough month, so we'll continue to support them. I think February was much better. They're starting to get back on track, but always just good to get a pulse on the local business community and try to figure out their challenges and how we kind of address some things moving forward. Other than that, we have secured the partnership with the State of Minnesota Chamber, and this is something that Downtown Moorhead Inc. has kind of set up, but we've partnered with the State Chamber on this Grow Minnesota initiative. We are going to cost share that with the Moorhead Business Association. So Sherry and I, whether I'm representing the city through the contract and we're going out and meeting with Anheuser-Busch and Soul Avenue Kitchen, or just kind of going out and just having casual conversations. Now we have a partnership with the State Chamber that we have a survey tool. We can get that out to our businesses. That data directly goes back to the State Chamber. They can start producing quarterly reports for us, annual reports for us. Also it's really good for us because then we start seeing that data firsthand, but it's even better because now the state gets to see that same data and they can start working for us legislatively. I think the biggest thing, and I've said this to this group many times, but we need our state partners specifically, or just other partners outside of Moorhead, to understand what we're up against. I think that's sometimes the hardest thing, especially when Lisa, is down at the Capitol, for them to truly understand our challenges. It's easy just to present, some type of program to change it, but for them to fully understand what we're up against. And as long as we have more advocates helping us, I think it's going to better us in the long term. So it's a yearly thing. We're also talking with the Greater Fargo-Moorhead EDC, the local chamber. Other EDAs across the state participate in this Grow Minnesota partnership. It's really, I think, quite inexpensive to be a participant in it. It's a $500 partnership fee. And then if you want your own access to this Salesforce database system, it's a $285 charge. So just for the purposes of Downtown Moorhead Inc. and MBA cost sharing this, I think it's costing us less than $400 each to participate in this program. So it's a no-brainer for us, especially as most of the state is participating in it right now. We're excited to be a part of it. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions within the report or other things that the board may have.
Yeah.
Just a couple of things. One,
Yeah.
I know, I was actually talking with Carrie Winterstein about this with Theater B and looking at local restaurants. And has there been any talk of maybe creating, this would not be an EDA, but more of an MBA or Downtown Moorhead, something that would be like a night out in Moorhead, get people to come in, go to a show, or go to a dinner, go to a show. So if there were, things that were out there that were promoting it, that might be another way to draw people in, and they'd try one of the restaurants that perhaps they hadn't been to. And we've got other great theater and arts programs that are happening in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. We've had some conversations. Sherry and I have talked quite a bit about it because it's a big one, and it's hard to delineate. You don't want to get too involved in somebody's businesses
Right.
either. Like that's their business, how they operate. But our big thing is, especially like even events at the Yum Comps, there's been a lot of international type events, specifically looking at the Celtic Festival, or there's one that was celebrating some of the people from Nepal, but I don't think the people from Everest Steakhouse even knew that was happening. So how do you just connect that bridge to say, hey, there's an event, and hey, there's also a really good local restaurant that specializes in this. You should check that out. So I think we're trying to find that balancing act of just how we promote some things internally with some of the great, especially with the diversity that we have in our restaurants is really unique, and it's something we can celebrate and just kind of connect the dots to it as well. It's fascinating. I share this story too because especially with our college kids, a lot of international students. We had a couple there was a group of probably 15 that showed up to the open house for the downtown plan. And one of the girls, she says, "Is Thai Orchid new?" And I'm like,
Oh, gosh.
no. And she was a junior, senior, and that's it's unfortunate to hear it, but, you know, she found it like a month ago, and now she goes there every week with her friends. Like, they're that, you know, impressed with it. But, you know, how do we just even connect the
Right.
students to the
Right.
great restaurants that we have as well? So there's some different ideas we're kicking around. It's just, our biggest thing is we don't want to do something without the input from the restaurant
Right.
owners. So we've even talked about even MBA having a subset of their group that just is a restaurant kind of task force or restaurant subcommittee. And then we can get some of those owners talking to each other and kind of do some self-promotion from within.
I know, because you've probably seen this, that I know CVB does, in Fargo does something with they have a beer tour and a wine one, and there's punch cards, and you just get a little, or stamp cards, and collect those, and you get something at the end of it, and it'd be neat to see something like that on our side of the river.
Absolutely.
And then the other thing I just wanted to ask, I'm glad we've got the dates now for the small business tour, and that's a great event. Do you have any sneak previews for some of our new great businesses that we might be able to tour at that time?
And that's, you know, we actually wanted to open that up to the group here. We have some ideas, but we really wanted to open it up to the EDA of maybe some places that you would like to see. Certainly Amy and I, and we've talked with Sherry Larson too, of some different ideas where we could go, but it's also, I like to have it a little bit more open with where people would like to see. So we've talked about the Springer Midwest as a new business. They should be up and operational. That could be one that we'd look at. Last year, we had the opportunity to kind of be a soft opening for ushers, which was kind of nice, but I think this year we've talked about maybe checking out Soul Avenue Kitchen by Junkyard. But obviously, there's a lot of stops that we can do in between. So we wanted to open that up to the group here with 10A of just maybe some places that the EDA would like to check out, and maybe give some direction for Amy and I and Sherry Larson to kind of make some phone calls and see if businesses are open for us to take a stop and see what they're up to. So maybe that's something that I'd open it up to this group to see if there's ideas or places that you want us to check on.
You want a list? River Haven for one, obviously. I mean, we were able to go in and see some of the work they're doing. That's going to be fantastic, and they should be, right, Dan? They should be all up and running by then. And then, you know, if Swing Barrel, I'm assuming they're in that whole area. I mean, we've got that. We could go do the climbing wall. I mean, you know, see how many EDA members can get up to the top. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we talked to Simon Warehouse.
Yeah.
Kevin Bartram should be pretty far along in that project as well by that time. Obviously, there's a lot happening on Center Avenue between 8th and 11th, so you could probably spend a whole day just hanging out around that area too. But yeah, those are great stops that we can certainly look into. Any others from the group?
Isn't New Roz new since last year, too? That's one of the restaurants in South Moorhead.
Yep. And I would say too, you know, certainly we can look at new ones, but these can be existing ones too, right? So Amy and I have even kicked around, I don't know how many people have been inside RDO's building. That's another one that could be there. Certainly the school's done a lot down by, Muscatel. We stopped at Muscatel, but the former, now where like the buses are going for the school district down that way, that could be a unique spot. I know they've done a lot of work there. Bite Speed, yep. I've actually been through their building. It's actually quite interesting to go through that facility. Yeah, we can certainly put that to the list too. I think we're probably looking at, Amy, what would you say, maybe 5 stops max?
Yeah, max.
Just, yeah. So we can kind of do some checking on some folks, and then maybe what we can do is send a list out to the EDA here and see if there's some preferences.
Yeah, and if we have any other ideas, we can email you.
Yep.
Or
Absolutely.
I think that's a good idea, too. So just keep that in mind. Thanks for bringing that up.
Yep.
Anybody have information on the development report?
We just put it in there as reference. That's active now on the website. So Amy put it in your packet as a digital copy here, as a paper copy, sorry. But credit to Amy and Christy Lashevsky, Lisa, Bodie, the whole planning team up there did an excellent job of putting this together. So this is a tool that we're certainly going to promote. It starts on page 39 in your packet here. Something that we're going to promote, be able to use in a lot of different settings when we're going out and talking to businesses or just the general public. There's been a lot of really great things that happened in 2019. There's a lot of work that was done. And kudos to a lot of the city staff for being flexible and accommodating that. So, you know, feel free to look through at your leisure. Again, if you have any questions or comments with that particular report, just let us know. Or if there's ways for us to improve on as well for future years, just keep us posted as well. But I think it's a really well done report.
Last item is anybody that's interested in taking a look at the building permit status. You can go online. I don't know if it's updated this previous month yet, but. Just today, okay. So with that, any other items? Hearing none, the meeting's adjourned. Thank you.